Now let's turn our attention to Russian President Vladimir Putin. He visited the front lines this week, parts of eastern Ukraine that Russia has taken over. He was seen dressed in a heavy blue jacket, descending from a military helicopter, greeting senior commanders. But was it really Putin? Ukraine says it was a body double. And frankly, this debate is not new. Putin has been at the center of such speculation for a while now. People analyze his ears, his wrinkles, his fingers, and conspiracy theories flood the internet. But then again, Putin is not the only one. Many leaders have been accused of using political decoys. They're individuals with strong physical resemblance to the person they impersonate. Who are these leaders, and why do they need a body double? Here's a report.
Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the war zone in Ukraine this week. It was his second trip since the war in Ukraine began. So it's a big deal. But for Kyiv, something else is even bigger. They say Putin was never in Ukraine because he was using a body double. And this only renewed such conspiratorial claims because this debate is not new. In fact, only last month, Putin's body double was rumored to appear. Reports say he has an entire team of them. And such claims of Putin using body doubles have surely increased, especially since last February. That's when the war in Ukraine began. But he's not the only leader who's said to have used body doubles. In February, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was accused too. Apparently, he used a double while meeting US President Joe Biden, who, by the way, has been accused of this too. People claim he used one while receiving a COVID vaccine. So according to rumors, many leaders use political decoys. The list is long. It includes North Korea's Kim Jong-un, USSR leader Joseph Stalin, the late Queen of Britain, Queen Elizabeth, and even the late Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. And these conspiracy theories only get wilder. Reports say the political decoys often use plastic surgery. But some things can still give them away. For starters, the height. Then gestures and body language, because they are unique for every person. And then, earlobes. Yes, ears are a good identifier. Here's a fun fact. Since the 1950s, ear measurements have been used by forensic scientists. They can help in identifying suspects of crime. And today, ears have become an even bigger identifier than fingerprints. So experts are now comparing Putin's earlobes across the years. But it's not confirmed if Putin ever used a decoy. Some others haven't been so lucky. Like the former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. His political aide said that Kissinger used an impersonator. For most cases, there is no real proof. However, speculation on the matter seems irresistible. These theories continue to enthrall the masses. They correlate with rumors of leader illnesses. Some even say leaders use body doubles to escape capture, like Osama bin Laden and Hitler. But these rumors continue with little to back them up. That being said, it's unclear if body doubles will even be useful in the future. Because this is a time when young ABBA appeared on stage in a holographic avatar. And during an election rally in France last year, Jean-Luc Mélenchon appeared in 11 cities simultaneously, again through a hologram. So technology is clearly moving on. For aspiring Putin doubles, their career prospects may be limited.
Our world order is undergoing big changes, and they're not necessarily for the better. Our world is becoming more dangerous. Two powers are in a race, the United States and China, and they're ramping up their weapon stockpiles. They're arming themselves with more dangerous weapons and more nuclear weapons. We are entering a new strategic era, one that will be defined by this great power contest. The risk of conflict is higher than ever before. I'll show you how, and we'll start with China. The PLA is eyeing a new weapon, a drone. It will be used to snoop on rivals. The Chinese military is amassing all kinds of spying tools these days. First the balloons, then a base in the Antarctic, we told you about it yesterday, and now the drones. The Americans say they pose a threat. They ordered a secret military assessment. China's new drones will fly at supersonic speeds, they say, at least 3 times the speed of sound. The drones have more capabilities, including a cutting-edge surveillance system. This will relay real-time data. How can this help the PLA? Such capabilities can be the difference between victory and defeat in war. Using this data, the PLA's generals can make real-time decisions. They can order missile strikes and strike with precision. Reports say the PLA has already established a unit for this drone, the supersonic drone. It falls under their Eastern Theater Command. And where will China deploy these supersonic drones? Taiwan is a clear target. These drones can help China target American warships around Taiwan, even the military bases in the region. So drones are a clear worry. But there's a bigger threat, and that is nuclear weapons. China wants more nukes, and it wants them fast. Xi Jinping seems determined. He wants to close the gap with America. So he's ordered an expansion plan. China has about 410 nuclear warheads today. By the end of this decade, this number could grow to 1,000 warheads. And by 2035, China could end up with 1,500 nukes. This will bring them close to America's stockpile. How many nuclear weapons does the US have? In 2021, it had around 3,750 nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads. These include both active and inactive warheads. China wants to catch up for obvious reasons. It wants to use these nuclear weapons as deterrents to keep America away from Taiwan. And it's speeding up the production of these weapons. It is now building a new reactor in Fujian. This reactor will deliver plutonium. What's plutonium? A radioactive chemical used to make atom bombs. So China has conveyed its intentions. It has started a new nuclear race. And the US plans to not be left behind. It has plans to modernize its nuclear arsenal. Washington will spend $2 trillion on this, $2 trillion on nuclear weapons. This money will not be spent in one go. The US plans to spend $2 trillion over 30 years to completely upgrade their nuclear triad. What's a nuclear triad? It basically means the ability to launch nuclear strikes from land, sea, and air. That's a triad. America can do all three. And now it is upgrading these weapons. It is responding to a two-front challenge, the threat from China and the threat from Russia. Because Russia too remains a player. Russia too is developing new nuclear systems. In February, Moscow refused to honor the START treaty with the US. The START treaty placed limits on nukes. It came into force in the 1990s. The US and Russia decided to cut back on their nukes after the fall of the Soviet Union, and also allow inspections on nuclear sites. That's what they agreed to. Those were some of the key commitments, but Russia has suspended its participation. So the world is now in a three-way arms race: the US, China, and Russia. And this race is more dangerous than the Cold War era. There were just two major nuclear powers then. Now there are three. And this is alarming not just for these three countries, but for the rest of the world too, because this could lead to a trickle-down effect. How would a country like India read the nuclear buildup in China? This is a threat to India too. If China can target America with nukes, it can do the same across the Himalayas. Have you ever seen a time machine in real life? If not, you could soon get the chance. Just turn on the TV on May 6th. You will be transported at least 3 centuries back. You will see a king ride a golden chariot. You will see him wear looted crown jewels. You will see loyal ministers line up inside a huge church. Basically, a whole lot of entitlement. Disclosure time: time machines do not exist. What I just described could be the coronation of King Charles. It's scheduled for May 6th. Now, if you're wondering how coronations are still a thing, you're not alone. Around 51% of Britons feel the same. They say the UK government should not be funding the coronation. The question is, what is the estimated bill? And turns out there isn't one. The UK government has not revealed what the coronation will cost. Talk about insult to injury. First, you make citizens pay for a 17th century ritual. Then you don't even tell them how much it costs. And the timing could not have been worse. UK's inflation is at 10%. It is the highest in Western Europe and G7. People are struggling to pay their food and power bills. And what does the government do? Splurge on the king. I know the new currency has his face on it, but it doesn't make it any better. While the government has been silent, some independent estimates have emerged. King Charles's coronation could cost anywhere between $60 million to $120 million, and that is taxpayers' money. Money that could have been used to build schools, to hire more teachers or doctors, basically anything but putting a 74-year-old man on a throne. But that's the Great Britain for you. Now, I know a lot of people will say it's Britain's money. They can spend it any way they want, which is true. But maybe ask your own people as well. By all accounts, the coronation will be deeply unpopular. Some of the biggest British stars have refused to perform at the event. Harry Styles said no. Elton John said no. So did Adele, Spice Girls and Robbie Williams. And frankly, it makes sense, perfect sense. God save the King! Why would you want to associate with an institution that pioneered slavery and colonialism? And that too in 2023. This brings us to the international reaction to the coronation. A lot of world leaders have accepted the invite. Joe Biden, for one, has been invited. India's President Draupadi Murmu has also been invited. So has Pope Francis. And many of them will attend the ceremony on the 6th of May. But that's not because they love the monarchy. It's basic diplomatic courtesy. But for a moment, think of all those former British colonies, all those communities enslaved, looted and massacred in the Crown's name. King Charles is the new face of that institution. And I'm not saying he's an evil person or he was directly involved, but the optics are undeniably cruel. And speaking of optics, another painfully awkward scene awaits us on the 6th of May. Britain's new monarch meeting his Indian origin First Minister. You guessed it right, Rishi Sunak. Now, some people will call it an example of Britain's inclusiveness. But let's be frank here. As the kids say nowadays, it will be cringe-worthy. The last coronation in Britain was around 70 years ago. Different monarch, different times. Today, we live in the era of political correctness. So why hasn't anyone cancelled the monarchy yet? Think about it on the 6th of May. As you watch King Charles ride a gilded chariot, paid for by taxpayers. As he walks out in fine clothes, paid for by taxpayers. And as he puts on the crown jewels, probably looted from a colony. I guess the British anthem makes sense now. Only God can save the king. Speaking of a new strategic era, it's not just about military realignment, it's also about diplomatic changes, about old allies drifting apart and new friendships popping up, like in Latin America. After the 1950s, it was basically a CIA playground. They carried out 34 coup attempts in 12 countries, 34. But this is 2023 and things have changed. Latin America is a lot more confident and assertive. Let me give you some examples. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is currently touring Latin America. His first stop was Brazil. Their president, Lula da Silva, has a taste for foreign policy. He hasn't joined Western sanctions against Russia, neither has he sent weapons to Ukraine, but on Monday he made an interesting statement. Lula blamed the US and Europe for extending the war. Listen to this.
Getting peace there is very difficult. President Putin does not take the initiative to stop. Ukrainian President Zelensky does not take the initiative to stop. Europe and the United States contribute to the continuation of this war.
The response was swift. Washington accused Lula of parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda. For Lula, it was a big statement to make because Brazil is a major non-NATO ally of the US. Bilateral trade is worth over $100 billion. So Washington's criticism unsettled Lula. The very next day, he condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. At the same time, he reiterated his peace offer. So that's one US ally acting a bit shaky. The second is Mexico. Their president is openly accusing the Pentagon of spying. Listen to this.
Then we also have to take care of our information for the sake of national security. I made this decision. No, we are now going to safeguard information from the Navy and the Defense Ministry because we are being a target of spying by the Pentagon.
Quick context. The Mexican president was talking about the Pentagon leaks. They mentioned military tensions between Mexico's Navy and the US Army. Whatever the reason, the outcome is bad for Washington. Mexico is their largest trading partner in the region. Total trade, more than $600 billion, not to mention the porous border between them. Now, both these examples should raise alarm bells in Washington. They threaten one of the cornerstones of US policy. It's called the Monroe Doctrine. What does this policy say? That the US must have total domination over the Western Hemisphere. No other power should be allowed to enter. The first target of this policy was European powers, but not anymore. The new threat is China and Russia. As always, it's the money that's making the moves. In the year 2000, China's trade with Latin America was $12 billion. Now, $430 billion. It is the region's second largest trading partner overall, and first in countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. China is their biggest trading partner. And don't forget the loans. China has lent $140 billion to Latin America. In exchange, they got access to oil. These numbers cannot be dismissed as random. They reflect a change in US attitude. For decades, they took Latin America for granted. All the coups, all the so-called wars on drugs, all the relentless lecturing. Surely it had to backfire at some point. So naturally, Latin American nations are exploring their options. Last year, Joe Biden hosted the Summit of Americas. Leaders from Mexico, Cuba, and Venezuela did not attend. He got a second embarrassment last month. President Lula of Brazil skipped his Summit for Democracy. So the message to Washington seems quite clear. This isn't the 1950s anymore. But does that mean Latin America is cozying up to China or Russia? Well, not necessarily. This shift is more about neutrality than picking sides. It's about making the most of the emerging order. An example of that is Argentina. Reports say they're interested in joining the BRICS. It would mess up the acronym, but that's the rumor. Going forward, the Monroe Doctrine is likely to get weaker. America faces a similar challenge in West Asia, but there, US military assistance remains unrivaled. That's not the case in Latin America. Such a shift may not happen overnight, but it's certainly in the works. Every day we bring you news of conflicts, economic, military, and political. Why do they matter? Because they impact our lives. Also because they appear more dramatic and more urgent. Would you put a heat wave in the same category? Because we have. A deadly heat wave is silently killing lives and livelihoods and impacting more people than we care to acknowledge. The numbers are scary. Almost half of India's workers work outdoors. They are at risk. The loss in GDP is monumental. Even Nepal and China are reporting temperatures above 40 degrees. People are dying. This is not a weather story anymore. It is hurting your health. It is hurting your body and the economy of your country. If you're watching us from Asia, you already know what I'm talking about. Look at this map. From India to Bangladesh, Thailand, even Eastern China, they're all red. In most of these cases, temperatures are shooting above 40 degrees. Records are being broken, and India is among the worst affected. Over 90% of India is experiencing a severe heat wave. And we are only in the month of April. The worst may be yet to come. But already people are dying because of the heat. Many cities are reporting record temperatures. This week, India's meteorological department issued a heat wave alert. Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, Sikkim, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, these states saw extreme heat. Prayagraj recorded the maximum temperature. Prayagraj is in India's Uttar Pradesh. It's the country's largest state. Earlier this week, it was reporting temperatures above 44 degrees Celsius. In some cities, schools have been closed. On Sunday, 11 people died in Maharashtra and scores needed medical help. Do you know what happened there? There was a government event. It was held outdoors. The attendees were sitting under the scorching sun, and this led to dehydration, even death. It is so hot that staying outside may put your life at risk. But many Indians don't have a choice. Look at this statistic. Around 49% of Indian workers work outdoors. That translates to over 230 million workers. 23 crore people in India work outdoors. They have no choice but to suffer the scorching heat. And this could be dangerous. Experts have raised an alarm. Indians are extremely vulnerable to heat waves, they say. The soaring temperatures can lead to health risks and food shortages. According to one estimate, 90% of India's population could be at risk. That's more than 1 billion people. And they could be adversely affected by heat waves. This is not a recent trend, though. Heat waves have been taking lives in India for decades now. Again, I have some data. Since 1992, over 24,000 people have died in India. Extreme heat took these lives, 24,000. And it could be worse in the future. Extreme heat could impact every aspect of our lives. 90% of India's total area now lies in extreme heat danger zones. There will be loss of productivity. Extreme heat could lead to 15% decline in outdoor working capacity. It will reduce the quality of life. 480 million people are vulnerable. Even India's economic growth is under threat. By 2050, 2.8% of India's GDP could be lost because of the heat. So the impact will be on both lives and livelihoods. And India won't be the only country to suffer. The entire Asian region is at risk. Look at Thailand. Last week, the heat wave there turned brutal. Temperatures soared to 45 degrees. This is a new national heat record for Thailand. In Bangladesh, temperatures soared above 40 degrees. That was the temperature in Dhaka. Last Saturday was the hottest for Bangladesh in 58 years. In some areas, roads were melting. It was that hot. Even China is suffering. On Monday, 12 Chinese provinces made new records. They reported their highest temperatures for the month of April. Maximiliano Herrera is a weather historian, and he's been tracking this heat wave, and this is what he says. This, and I'm quoting, this is the worst April heat wave in Asian history. The worst ever. If the trend continues, more records could be broken. Our world faces numerous threats: unresolved conflicts, terrorism, pandemics, life-threatening, dangerous shortages. It is time to add climate change to that list. Extreme heat is proving to be a silent killer. And we know world leaders disagree on most things. Perhaps they can agree on this one.
And there they go. It looks like
The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.